Hello and welcome back to the Dougie Critchley Football YouTube channel where, with the transfer window closing a week on Monday, I have scouted the perfect signing for every major European club to complete before that deadline. Let's get into it. Let's kick off with Napoli. Now, I released my predictions for 25-26 earlier this week, and I had Napoli as Serie A title winners, and I'm sticking with that prediction. I do think they've had a phenomenal summer of business, but crucially, Romelu Lukaku has picked up a recent injury which could see him miss 3 months of the season. Now, unless you're backing new signing Lorenzo Luca to lead the line or maybe making way with something like Scott McTominay playing up front, it does feel like Napoli need a striker if they want to retain the Serie A title and become the first side in Italy to do so for 6 years. I think they should go for Rasmus Hojlund. Now, the reports are that Napoli, Milan and Leipzig have been looking at Hojlund. Milan, that deal for Victor Boniface looks close to completion. At Leipzig, he would be going into a side that has lost Benjamin Šeško, that might potentially lose Xavi Simons to, that Yusuf Poulsen has left. It doesn't feel as settled as Napoli. And for Napoli, they supposedly are willing to offer a loan with an obligation to buy. And that is what Hojlund wants most of all. He wants an obligation to buy so he knows where he'll be playing the year after next. And having played in Serie A before and done pretty well for Atalanta, I think there's a decent chance that he replicates that form in Naples blue next year. Now, has Hojlund worked out for Man United? Absolutely not. He was signed for £64 million with about £8 million worth of add-ons in the summer of 2023. That was the same summer that they brought in Mount. Andre Onana signed that year. Amrabat signed that summer. It was a really bad summer on reflection for Man United. That season, Ten Hag's side finished 8th, but they did win the FA Cup. Hojlund, in his first year, was solid, I think it's fair to say. 16 goals in all competitions. He top scored for United, a poor United side, admittedly. Was he brilliant? No. Was there something to work on? Absolutely. Last season, though, there's no two ways about it. It was dreadful for Man United and it was dreadful for Rasmus Hojlund. Ten Hag was fired in October. Ruben Amorim arrives. The side eventually finishes 15th. They lose the Europa League final. They only score 44 league goals in the entire campaign. Hojlund contributes 4 of those from an XG of 5.3. He looks so bereft of confidence. His touch was missing. His involvement in general play was clunky. It was just a really miserable campaign for him, and it does feel like he needs a move now with Benjamin Šeško through the door to kind of reinvite and reinvigorate that career, because this is a guy that only started for Atalanta for 6 months consistently and had been playing for Sturm Graz the previous year in the Austrian Bundesliga, where he scored 6 league goals, and within 12 months he was Man United's big hope without very much backup whatsoever. But at Napoli, when Romelu Lukaku, one of the best strikers of his generation, comes back, Hojlund will be able to learn off him, who's a brilliant hold-up player. Lukaku runs the channel so effectively as well and is an excellent finisher. It feels like the perfect destination for Hojlund to get his career back on track, and I hope this move is completed. Stop what you're doing! Have you subscribed yet? If not, why not, guys? Get involved, hit that red button. I'm going to be jumping around a few different countries, but for now, let's stay in Italy and talk about Inter Milan. Now, they were going for the treble last season and ended up with nothing. It was pure Bayer Leverkusen 2002 vibes, and it was clear that they needed a refresh. The average age of this squad was 30.9. That was the average, 30.9. That's the joint oldest in Inter's history, and they have been linked with midfielders like Manu Kone in recent weeks. It's no clearer whether that will actually be done, whether he wants to leave Roma, who have just appointed Gasperini, who finished the season so spectacularly under Claudio Ranieri. But with Mkhitaryan 36, with Zielinski and Calhanoglu 31, it's clear that in the engine room, they need more legs to go alongside Sucic, who's looked really impressive since arriving, and Nicolo Barella, and Calhanoglu will likely play a few games too. But I do think they need another dynamic star midfielder. Now, my suggestion for that role is a little bit left field, but stay with me now. I think Inter Milan should look at Fulham's Alex Iwobi. Now, Iwobi was phenomenal last season for Fulham in the Premier League. He got 9 goals and 6 assists. He was arguably their best player all season. He was mainly playing off the left. He can play off the right, but he can play in central midfield too and be a really dynamic presence in terms of driving the team up the pitch. Last year in the Premier League, he ranked 6th for progressive carries. He ranked 1st for carries into the final third. And that feels like what Inter are missing. They're missing someone to connect that midfield and Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram up front. And Barella can do so with his running and his passing, but at 28, maybe they need to start thinking about the future of that role too. Alex Iwobi is no spring chicken either, but he's so dynamic, he's so brilliant to watch, and he also works really hard off the ball too. I think he'd make a massive difference at Inter. Let's head over to Spain now and talk about Real Madrid. Now, I think they actually look pretty complete in every position. I think maybe long term they'll be looking and thinking about Courtois' long-term replacement. I doubt they give that to Andrei Lunin when Courtois finally ages out, but that's not one for the final few days of the window. It's way too expensive, and Courtois is still very much at his best. At left back, Alvaro Carreras, Fran Garcia, Folomondi. That's really deep. At right back, Trent Alexander-Arnold can now rival Dani Carvajal. At centre back, Dean Howson arrived. Eder Militao, Alaba, Rudiger, really deep there. In midfield, Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde, Bellingham, Güler. Up front, Brahim Diaz, Rodrigo looks like he's staying. Mastantuono just signed. There's Gonzalo Garcia who's just come through. They've still got Endrick, they've got Mbappe, they've got Vinicius Jr. But I wonder whether in midfield they miss a little bit of a controller. Valverde and Bellingham are absolutely wonderful players, but I think of them more as transitional players. And Xabi Alonso has already said that he wants to see Bellingham return to that form from his debut season and be pushed up a little bit closer to the likes of Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. to link up with them and use his phenomenal running ability to break into the box late. I love Camavinga as a player, but he does have a slightly dodgy injury record, and he's more of a sort of dynamic line breaker. He is a very solid passer, but I do think they're missing a sort of metronome in midfield since Toni Kroos's departure. And yes, Arda Güler can definitely link midfield and attack, but that's a lot of pressure for a 20-year-old. So I think they should look at Stuttgart's Angelo Stieler. Now, Stieler reportedly has a €36 million release clause, which only becomes active in 2026, and Real Madrid were looking at that earlier in the summer. They were really sniffing around that, but it feels like with Stuttgart looking for around €50 million this summer, Real Madrid have decided to make do with their current options, which does include Dani Ceballos as well, and get Stieler next year with that release clause having dropped, which feels like a very sensible plan for them going forward. But Stieler right now, and if you let Dani Ceballos go, I think that's a huge upgrade in that area. Last year for Stuttgart, he ranked 6th in midfielders in Europe for passes completed. He ranked 7th for progressive passes completed amongst players of all positions. 8th for passes into the final third. He's an amazing dead ball specialist with that left foot, and I think whilst Camavinga can do somewhat of Stieler's progression, I actually think Camavinga is way better when you've given him a license to roam forward and use that phenomenal ball carrying ability. Stieler from deep feels like someone that would really mesh that midfield together and allow those different profiles to thrive. I think they should get it done this summer if they could. Now let's head over to Barcelona and talk about Real Madrid's El Clasico rivals. I think they look a little light in defence after Inigo Martinez's shock departure. Not necessarily at centre-back, because they've got Kubasi and Ronald Araujo and Christensen and Eric Garcia, and of course Jules Koundé, who will play at right-back for them, can also cover there. At right-back, they could potentially use a backup to Jules Koundé, but I think at left-back, given the fact that Alejandro Balde has missed 31 games with injury over the last 2 seasons, and their natural backup is Gerard Martin, I think they could upgrade and get a backup left-back and actually let Gerard Martin leave. Now, of course, every Barcelona fan would be dreaming of a top-quality addition at left-back to rival Alejandro Balde. You know, Nuno Mendes is the dream, or a Destiny Udogie. Not happening, though, or a Federico Di Marco, although he's more of a left wing-back, and he's not arguably a top one either, given his performance against Lamine Yamal last year. There's some work to prove that he's still of that level, let's say, that deserves that title. But in terms of a backup left-back for Barcelona that would realistically arrive at Barcelona in the final few weeks of the window, I think they could do a lot worse than Oleksandr Zinchenko. Look, a few weeks ago I was suggesting him for West Ham as an attacking midfielder, but it's clear that he would do a job at Barcelona as a backup to Balde, and he's clearly not wanted by Arsenal either. They've got Calafiori, they've got Lewis Skelly, they've got Jurrien Timber. They need to sell the likes of Kivior, Zinchenko, Fabio Vieira, Reece Nelson, especially with that Eze deal looking like it's going to be completed imminently. I think they'd accept a fee for Zinchenko, and a fairly affordable one too. If Barcelona came forward and offered £15 million to £20 million for Zinchenko, I think Arsenal would probably take it. Is he good enough for Barcelona? Absolutely. You only need to watch this guy technically to see how adept he is on the ball. He still ranks in the top 1% of fullbacks for progressive passes, the top 4% for shot creating actions. As a backup to Alejandro Balde, I think this feels like a tap-in for Barcelona. Let go of Gerard Martin, bring in Zinchenko. Let's head over to Germany now and talk about Bayern Munich, who are the overwhelming favourites for the Bundesliga title. They scored 99 league goals last year. That was only topped by Barcelona. They had the 4th best defensive record in the entirety of Europe. And you look at what their rivals have had happen to them this summer. They've been absolutely pillaged by Premier League clubs, whether it's Leverkusen losing Wirtz, Xhaka, Frimpong, Radetzky's left there as well. Jonathan Tah, of course, going to Bayern Munich. You look at Leipzig losing Šeško, potentially Xavi Simons soon too. Dortmund losing Gittins. This feels like a very straightforward Bundesliga title run for Bayern Munich. But one area where I do think they look a little bit light is in forward areas, with Coman, Müller, Sane all having departed the club this summer, and Tell on a permanent deal too. I think they could really do with a versatile forward that can play up front and on the wings, and I think they should look at a little bit of a shock one here, Randal Kolo Muani. Now you might think this is crazy. This is of course Kolo Muani, who joined PSG in 2023 for an initial 75 million euros, potentially rising to 90 million euros. That was the same summer PSG went absolutely mental in the transfer market. They lost Messi and Neymar, they went and signed Gonzalo Ramos, Bradley Barcola, Ousmane Dembele arrived, Ekitike was signed permanently. The following year, Kolo Muani starts 13 Ligue 1 games, he does another 13 off the bench, and he's not too bad. He gets 6 goals and 5 assists, but he's far from a regular first team player. Luis Enrique then wants to play Ousmane Dembele as a central 9. The following summer they also signed Desiree Doué, and Kolo Muani is phased out. He goes to Juventus in the back half of last year and actually plays a crucial role in Juventus securing Champions League football, finishing 1 point ahead of 5th. Kolo Muani may not be that popular, but he is available this summer and he does make a lot of sense. The thing I like most about Kolo Muani is he can play all across that front line. He can deputise for Harry Kane as a central striker. He can play on the left, he can play on the right, and in his one season with Eintracht Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, 15 goals and 11 assists in that time. Even last year with Juventus, scores 9 goals in half a season. That's really, really impressive. He's a very, very good dribbler. He can add a threat in behind. He's a nice alternative to someone like Harry Kane, who's now much more of a ball to feet, dropping short player. And look, Juventus are supposedly closing in on Kolo Muani, but they are looking to sign a deal with PSG for a €50 million obligation to buy, reportedly. If Bayern, hypothetically, offered €40 million to PSG right now, right here, right now, would PSG accept? I think so. And I think Kolo Muani would be a brilliant backup in a number of positions for Bayern. It just feels like it makes a lot of sense. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. Let's head back to Italy now and talk about Juventus. Now they've got Igor Tudor in charge. He's set to play 3-4-3 or a variation of it this season. They're going to play Yildiz on the left-hand side. They're going to play David or potentially Kolo Muani if they land him, or Vlahovic essentially. It will be David primarily, I would have thought, and Francisco Conceição on the right-hand side. Cambiasso will be the left wing-back. João Mario, who they signed from FC Porto, will be the right wing-back. They've got Teun Koopmeiners and Locatelli and Kefren Turam for the midfield slots. That feels pretty solid. At the back, they've got Di Gregorio in goal. Kalulu will probably play on the right-hand side. They've also got Bremer to play more centrally. But at the left-hand side of their defence, it looks like it might be Lloyd Kelly, which feels like a real weak link. So I think they should look to sign Eintracht Frankfurt defender Arthur Theat. Now, Arthur Theat came through in his native Belgium. He then spent a year at Bologna, so he's already got Serie A experience. He started a number of games that season. He then did 2 years at Rennes, and then he was loaned to Eintracht Frankfurt last summer. They made that loan permanent in February, and he played a massive part in them finishing 3rd last season. He played 42 games in all competitions. He ranked 1st for league minutes in Eintracht Frankfurt's squad. And this is a really solid all-round player. This is a guy that's very good in the air, he's strong in the tackle, he reads the game very well, but in terms of the ball at his feet, I don't think there's too many better left-footed centre-backs in Europe right now. In terms of progressive passes amongst centre-backs in the Bundesliga last year, he ranked 3rd behind Nico Schlotterbeck and Kim Min-jae. He's got a contract until 2029. He's currently valued at around €24 million by Transfermarkt. And yes, Eintracht Frankfurt have only made that move permanent after his loan from Rennes in February. But if Juve were somehow able to find 35 million euros, would Eintracht Frankfurt come to the table? I'm not so sure. But would Arthur Theat significantly improve the left-hand side of their centre-back defence? Absolutely. Get him in. Now let's talk all things AC Milan. They have had a crazy summer. They've lost key players in Malik Thiaw and Teo Hernandez and Tijani Reinders, Serie A midfielder of the year last year, who absolutely took to the Premier League like a duck to water against Wolves, of course. But actually, in terms of recruitment, I think they've had an excellent window. Estupiñán's arrived, De Winter at the back, Jashari, Samuel Rishi, Luka Modric. They're looking to complete a loan move for Victor Boniface as well. Absolutely brilliant. He contributed 22 league goals and assists in 23-24 as Bayer Leverkusen did that unbeaten Bundesliga and DFB Pokal double. I think that's really strong. They'll also have Santiago Jimenez, who's a very different profile to him. Boniface much more of a facilitator. They'll have Pulisic on the right. They'll have Rafa Leao. It's looking pretty set. But if Allegri is going to stick with a 3-4-3 formation, I think they could upgrade at right wing back. Yes, they did sign Athakame earlier this summer from Young Boys, but he's only 20 years old. And of course, they've still got Alexis Salamakers, but I think they could upgrade in that area. And I think Andrei Ratiu, who I've been talking about a lot on the lowdown this summer, could be a really shrewd addition. The Rayo Vallecano right midfielder / right wing back, who can play as a right back conventionally as well, is so dynamic on that right hand side. He created the second most chances in Rayo Vallecano's squad last year, helped them to finish 8th, ended up with 2 goals and 3 assists. And in terms of a dribbler and a carrier, this is a phenomenal outlet. Over 6 foot as well. In Europe last season, he ranked 9th for dribbles completed between Musiala and Gittins. He is such an attacking cheat code. Earlier this summer, he was supposedly being explored by the likes of Spurs and Brighton. No one's gone for him as of yet. Milan should swoop in now. Let's talk all things Borussia Dortmund next. And whilst they've got plenty of legs in midfield now with Felix Metscher and Joe Bellingham and the passing of someone like Pascal Gross, Sally Özcan, that signing's never really worked out. Emre Can and Sabitzer are really a thing of the past. I think they need someone that can do a little bit of everything. If Kovac is going to stick to a 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, those midfield zones, those shuttlers, it's so helpful if they can do literally a bit of everything. So I think they should look at Monaco's Lamine Camara. Now, Lamine Camara is only 21 years old, but he arrived from Metz last summer at Monaco, and his first year was absolutely phenomenal. He ended up with 2 goals and 9 assists in the league alone, and he was so complete. Only Vanderson in the Monaco squad completed more defensive actions. He averaged 0.19 expected assists per 90 last season. That was the same as Luis Diaz and Gabriel Martinelli in the Premier League. And in terms of chances created, he was at 44. That was just 1 fewer than Alexis McAllister for Liverpool. This is a guy that can do everything. He's currently valued at 22 million euros by Transfermarkt. He's got a contract that goes until 2029. Monaco won't want to lose him, but ultimately they are a selling club. They do have other players in that position, not least Paul Pogba, who's coming back from his ban. If, hypothetically, Dortmund offered 35 million euros, I think Monaco would be tempted on an instant increase in the money they paid Metz a year ago. Lamine Camara to Dortmund, I think he'd be a phenomenal addition. PSG have had a really solid summer of recruitment. They signed Chevalier, who's a much more natural fit for Luis Enrique's style of play than Donnarumma. They've got Pacho and Beraldo now on the left-hand side of their defence. They've got Marquinhos and new signing Zabani on their right-hand side of their defence. They've got Fabian Ruiz and Warren Zaire-Emery to back up their usual midfielders. They've got a plethora of forwards in different areas that can play in different positions. That's really promising too. But I think one area where they could definitely strengthen is their depth behind Achraf Hakimi. Now this is a pretty thankless task. Achraf Hakimi is arguably, I think, the best right back in world football right now, and he's missed 8 games with injury in the last 6 seasons, which is why I'm targeting a much younger, more developing player who doesn't mind backing up Hakimi for the next couple of years. The best option that I think fits that category right now is Goulart Doué at Strasbourg. He's a 22-year-old that signed from Rennes last summer. He nearly helped Strasbourg qualify for the Champions League last year. He's very comfortable on the ball. He ranks in the top 10% of fullbacks for passes completed per game. His tackle success rate last year was 69%. Hakimi's, for context, in his entire career has never been above 57%. He also completed over 60% of his dribbles. That's a tally that Hakimi has never got to. And yes, he's playing with less spotlight, with less pressure, but I do think he'd be a really nice addition to back up Hakimi going forward. So guys, what did you guys make of my suggestions for deadline day signings for every major club in Europe? Let me know in the comments section. Do you think they're realistic? Do you think they are unrealistic, too expensive? Let me know all your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching another video on my channel. I am absolutely loving making this content. Let me know what you're making of it. Let me know what you'd like me to cover next week on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great weekend and catch you next week. Bye.